I want to ask you something uncomfortable. Not about your job, not about your relationships, not about your goals. I want to ask you about the thing you already know needs to change. The conversation you've been putting off, or maybe the feedback you've been dismissing, the version of yourself you keep promising to work on, but later. Because most of us aren't stuck because we don't know what needs to change. We are stuck because changing it is going to hurt. And so we find a way to make peace with the pain we already have. We do this by maybe telling ourselves, this is just who I am. Or we tell ourselves, that's their problem, not mine. Or we tell ourselves, I'll deal with it when the time is right. But here's what nobody tells you, that is suffering too. Dismissing feedback is suffering. Keeping that distance is suffering. Staying in the version of yourself that isn't working, that's suffering. You just chose it so long ago that it stopped feeling like a choice. And I know this because I sat in a room one day, 13 years into my career, and had to face the fact that I had been choosing the wrong suffering for a very long time. And in that room, I had a decision to make. Here's something I believed for most of my working life. Professionalism meant leaving everything else at the door. No warmth, no small talk, no time for emotions. Point A to point B. Get the work done, go home. I genuinely thought that was the right way to be. I thought people who invested in relationships at work were wasting time. I thought being liked was irrelevant. I thought being effective was enough. And for years, people told me otherwise. Not once, not twice, over and over again. Too blunt, or you're not approachable, or you're hard to work with. And every single time, I dismissed it. I told myself these people just can't handle directness. Or I'd say to myself, this is a professional environment, not a friendship group. Sometimes I think maybe my results speak for themselves, and so I don't need to change. But what I was really doing was choosing the suffering of disconnection over the discomfort of change. So I was okay with, disconnecting with people, whereas I didn't want to take on this discomfort of changing. Every day I walked in with a straight face, very terse smile sometimes, closed off, and that was a choice. There was a choice to protect myself from the vulnerability of being warmer, a choice to avoid the discomfort of becoming someone different, a choice to keep suffering in a way that felt familiar, rather than face a suffering that might actually change something. I just didn't call it suffering. I called it professionalism. Then, about 6 or 7 years into my leadership role, my line manager called me in. He told me the higher ups were unhappy. Not necessarily with my work, but with me, my attitude, my bluntness, my lack of approachability. And he didn't dress it up. What he said was adapt or face the consequences. And I remember walking back to my room after that conversation. I sat with that. 13 years of experience, 13 years of feedback I had quietly filed away and ignored. And here it was again, except this time it had consequences attached to it. So I had a choice. I could fight back. I could blame the culture, blame the people who couldn't handle directness, blame the system. That would have been easy. I had 13 years of justifications ready to go. Or I could shut up and look at myself honestly. And sitting in that room, I realized something that I hadn't been willing to admit before. The problem wasn't them. It was a pattern, my pattern. Something that had been there for years, probably longer than my career. Definitely longer than this job. And every time it showed up, I had chosen to look away from it rather than at it. That is the most expensive kind of suffering there is. Not the dramatic kind. Not the kind that announces itself. It's the quiet kind, the slow kind, The kind where you spend years defending a version of yourself that is costing you more than you know. So I made a decision in that room. I was not going to fight it. I was not going to run from it. I was going to run straight towards it. And I gave myself 3 months. Now, here is what running towards the problem actually looked like. It's not a revelation and it's not a transformation. It wasn't a dramatic moment where everything clicked. Every morning I walked in, I forced myself to smile. That's it. I was not a natural smiler. I was straight-faced, closed, serious, and smiling at people felt unnatural, almost dishonest at first. Like I was performing something I didn't feel. But I did it anyway. Every morning, every person. I looked at them, I'd say good morning, and then I would smile. And then I started listening more and talking less. I started asking questions instead of giving answers. I started sitting with discomfort in conversations instead of shutting them down with bluntness. And let me tell you, it was a year of suffering. Real, deliberate, chosen suffering. Every instinct I had said, this isn't you. This feels wrong. Why are you doing this? And the answer was, because the other kind of suffering wasn't working. Because I had spent years being comfortable in my own closed-off version of professionalism. And all it had given me was a room full of people who didn't want to work with me, and a line manager telling me to change or get out. Now that's suffering. It just didn't feel like it at the time because it was familiar. The unfamiliar suffering, the daily discomfort of opening up, softening, choosing warmth over protection, that one gave something back. It gave me humility. It made feedback land differently. When someone told me something critical, I didn't reach for a defense anymore. I got curious. I asked why, and then I sat with it. It changed how I led people. It changed how I showed up at home. It changed me. Not because someone else changed around me, and not because the situation got easier, because I chose a different suffering. And I ran towards it every single day until it became who I am. And here's the truth that nobody wants to hear. You are already suffering. I want you to sit with that for a moment. You are already suffering. The avoiding is suffering, the dismissing is suffering, the staying quiet when you should speak, the staying comfortable when you should stretch, the staying the same when everything around you is asking you to grow. That's all suffering. You just chose it so long ago that it doesn't feel like a choice anymore. And here is the thing about the suffering you've been avoiding. It's not waiting for a better time. It's not going to get easier. It's just going to keep showing up in different forms, different relationships, different jobs, different cities. I've moved across countries and watched the same unresolved version of myself unpack its bags and settle right in next to me. You don't outrun what you haven't faced. The question is never, how do I avoid this pain? The question is always, which pain is worth choosing? So let me say this directly. Don't avoid the difficult person. Don't avoid the difficult conversation. And you definitely shouldn't avoid the feedback that stings. Don't avoid the version of yourself that needs to change. Because here's what happens when you do. The difficult person becomes a pattern you carry into the next relationship. The difficult conversation becomes years of resentment. The feedback becomes a room you're sitting in 13 years later, being told to change or face the consequences. The version of yourself you avoided becomes the ceiling you can't break through. And yes, sometimes you will run towards something and the other person won't meet you there. Sometimes you'll have the conversation and they will shut down. Sometimes you'll offer the honesty and it won't be received well. Sometimes you'll change and the situation still won't resolve cleanly, and that's absolutely okay because something always shifts. If the other person doesn't change, you change. If the situation doesn't resolve, your relationship with it changes. If the conversation doesn't go perfectly, your courage changes. You never walk away from the right fire the same person you were when you ran towards it. So this week, I want to leave you with one question, and just one. Write it down, sit with it, and don't rush past it. What feedback have you kept hearing and still haven't faced? Not the feedback you disagreed with once and moved on from, the feedback that keeps coming back from different people, different relationships, maybe different seasons of your life. The thing that seems to be clear to others, but you find a reason to dismiss. That's the one. Because I had 13 years of that feedback, 13 years of people telling me something true that I wasn't willing to hear. And every year I dismissed it was another year of choosing the wrong suffering. Don't wait for your room. Don't wait until someone sits you down and tells you to change or face the consequences. The feedback you've been hearing, it's not coming from nowhere. Run towards it. If you sit with that question and realize the pattern runs deeper than a single situation, if this feels like something that keeps showing up no matter what you do or where you go, that's worth exploring with someone. That's exactly the work I do with people one-on-one. But for now, and for this week, start with the question. This week, just you, and then find an honest answer. And the question, I'm going to repeat that again. What feedback have you kept hearing and still haven't faced? Because you are going to suffer either way. And that's not a pessimistic statement. That's the most honest thing I can tell you. You can suffer from avoiding the difficult conversation, or you can suffer through having it. You can suffer from staying the same, or you can suffer through changing. You can suffer from dismissing feedback, or you can suffer through maybe 1 year of forcing a smile every morning until it becomes who you are. Both paths are hard, but only one of them gives something back. Not every fire deserves you, but the fire that's connected to the person you say you want to become, that one is not going to wait forever. Run towards it. Well, that's our time for today, and this has been You're Not Listening, and you're on the second episode. If you need to get in touch, you can write to me at yournotlisteningshow@gmail.com. I'll say that once more. YOURE, not listening, that's without any apostrophe or spaces, show@gmail.com. I read each and every email that comes my way, and I would love to connect with you. And remember, maybe today the thing you most need to listen to isn't another person. Maybe it's the suffering you've been choosing. I'll see you guys in the next episode.